Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Chris Cox. I'm a Senior Construction Project Manager with Direct Supply, and I'm going to be your host today for a very important topic that we're going to be discussing, the SNF Backup Power Assessments and the Health Safety Code 1418.22 and compliance and common questions around the new code. First of all, we got to get legal out of the way. So just want to remind everybody this is intended for informational purposes, general information. This is not legal advice, and we will be recording this session. I'm sure I made a few attorneys happy, so we'll move on. Joining us today, we have two amazing experts. We have our regulatory expert, Matt Icenroad, Director of Jensen Hughes, where he provides support for a wide range of client consulting projects ranging from emergency preparedness, business continuity, life safety, and other risk engineering. He also leads the strategic vision and innovations across their portfolio. He's also previously served as Senior CMS Policy Advisor at the Joint Commission in Washington, D.C., where he had the opportunity to facilitate improvements in the National's emergency management, preparedness, and response capabilities, the healthcare environment of care, and the preservation of critical infrastructure, which is amazing. Thanks. Great having Matt. Our technical expert today will be Brody Coates, Senior Consultant Building Services at Direct Supply. Brody's a master electrician with 20 years of construction management experience. He has managed projects as large as $10 million in the commercial, healthcare, industrial, and institutional markets. Brody brings experience in the electrical industry, paired with the knowledge he gained owning and operating his own business. In an effort to reduce unnecessary loss of life, a quick overview actually, and we're gonna have time to go back through and have our experts weigh in on this, but we're gonna go this pretty quick. So the new regulation, in an effort to reduce unnecessary loss of life, legislation has been proposed across several states to increase coverage of emergency power backup in senior living communities. Last September, Gavin Newsom signed Assembly Bill 2511, requiring all skilled nursing facilities in California to extend emergency power back to HVAC, to back up HVAC, life care systems, and oxygen-generated devices for a minimum of 96 hours. Similar to Florida and Louisiana, the time available to gain compliance is short, and during today's webinar, you'll learn more. There's two things. One, what do I need to get started? And the second thing we're going to talk about today is how to manage risks or challenges towards the compliance. Direct Supply tells and our partners at Jensen Hughes have been following this, and we help senior living providers navigate new regulations, challenges to gain compliance, and impact positive outcomes in annual surveys. So quickly, what's changing? California is changing. There's three things to summarize. They're adding safe indoor temperatures that show 71 to 81 degrees in patient areas. They want life-saving equipment and patient carriers added to the emergency power, and also oxygen-generated equipment or systems. Take note, and these have to run for 96 hours under the new life safety code. CMS no longer is the standard. It would be California during your annual surveys and any type of local jurisdiction survey. It would supersede CMS in this instance, which is a big deal. What have we been asked to do? First things to know about California Health Code Safety 418.22 is that it supersedes again CMS. Specifically, what they're looking for us to do is power assessments, backup power assessments, which means we have to answer questions, provide floor plans, documentation, local approvals as required. And the key here is really making sure that we have this assessment done. It is the most important part of these steps for compliance. And once submitted, you'll receive a determination of compliance from HCI. If you're deemed compliant, you're good. You're pretty much done at this point for now. If you're deemed non-compliant, you'll need to close out your initial assessments with a proposed remediation, and we can help with that. This considers engineering to ensure projects meet municipal permitting and approval. Equipment specifications and procurement. We can also, with the extended lead times because of COVID, procurement of equipment has become a big issue. In some cases, taking months to get equipment. And then we can also help with the installation and startup again, managing local approvals as we go along. And I know that's a lot, but there's a lot. If you don't make it through the assessment, there's a lot to think about. And we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Today, we're going to focus on the common challenges heard from your peers over the last 6 months. Don't worry if we don't cover your questions. There will be plenty of time for Q&A, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of Q&A. So we're going to move on to the next slide. You're going to submit your questions by clicking on the top. There's a Ask Question button at the top of your screen. If you're in full screen mode, you're not going to see the button, so you're going to need to reduce from full screen mode so that you can actually click on the button and fill out the form. So we're going to move on to the next slide. And at this time, I'm going to bring our first expert, Brody Coates. He's going to discuss preparing backup assessments, power assessments.
Thanks, Chris. I'm going to kind of go over a little bit of what Chris talked about regarding the assessment and what some of those requirements are. And as he stated, the first step towards compliance is the assessment. In order to complete the assessment, you'll need to gather information from your existing systems. A list of all these items required are listed in the ePortal handout provided by HCI. Some of these items will include the HVAC systems, life safety equipment such as ventilators, defibrillators, crash carts, etc. You also need the existing generator information if one is on site, make, model, serial number, voltage, runtime, and what existing loads are currently being backed up by the generator. Along with the above, you'll need a floor plan of the facility showing the location of all the systems that you have listed. Once all the information is gathered, you can complete the online application by logging in to the portal and then entering that. From that, you'll get a report, and the report will state whether you are in compliance or not. Can you have the next slide then, please? The results that you receive from the report will determine what your next steps are. If the report comes back and you're in compliance, then no additional steps will be needed. If the report comes back and you're non-compliant, one of the two corrective actions may be needed. One may be the generator runtime. So if all necessary loads are backed up by the generator, but it does not meet the necessary runtime of 96 hours, a fuel delivery plan may be enough to make you compliant. If required loads are not backed up by the generator, engineering would be the next step, would need to be performed. After engineering is complete, this can be submitted to the AHJ and HCI and other regulatory departments in the area for review and approval. Once approval has been received from the AHJ, equipment can then be procured and ordered. And as we all know, the lead times on those can be quite extensive at this time. Once equipment has been received, then the construction process can begin and be performed till complete. Next, I will hand it off to Matt Icenroad to discuss the regulatory impact.
Great, thanks, Brody. Well, good afternoon, everyone. As Brody and Chris both mentioned, the new regulation is now the gold standard in California, and it supersedes what CMS has said. But I think it's important to recognize CMS's requirements and how they relate back to California. So first and foremost, as an emergency generator or standby power system is installed in your facility or is currently being maintained at your facility, it's really important that you are maintaining its inspection, its testing, and its maintenance per NFPA 110 and its location on 99. Those are really specific to the type of generator that you have and that type of emergency power, but make sure you're doing that. So if you're installing a new system, go back, go read 110, or myself or folks at Direct Supply can help you understand what those testing requirements are, because that will be the maintenance going forward as the state and the federal government will want you to maintain that. The other component here is the fuel on site. CMS does not require 96 hours of fuel. California does. So now you must maintain that generator to run for 96 hours, whether that is to maintain the fuel on site for that. We'll talk about lithium batteries in a moment, or if you're having a vendor deliver fuel. It's important to note that the regulation specifically mentions that there is no delay in fuel consumption. So if you run out of fuel and you're going to have a delivery, there cannot be a delay between the generator being offline and new fuel being delivered. So they have to happen almost at the same time, which will be challenging. So keep an eye on that. It's also important to recognize that these are requirements from CMS as well as the state health body. It does not take into account any EPA requirements. That's something totally different, but for these requirements, you have to maintain that 96 hours. So next slide, please. Thank you. So one of the things that you should pay attention to for your generator assessment is what policies and procedures are needing to be changed. And this is for folks without a generator currently that you're going to need to add one or changes to that system, or if you have one currently present. Because of the change in the 96 hours, you have to maintain those temperatures to protect residents' health and safety and the safe storage of provisions. Those provisions could be food, things of that nature that we're used to. It also can be any medical provisions, any medications that have to be refrigerated, as an example of that. So make sure your policies reflect that. Chris and Brody did a great job of mentioning the specific temperature ranges needed for clinical care. Your clinical teams also must maintain a policy stating the actual resident care and the resident temperatures of what we find appropriate and how they're going to maintain that provision, whether that's providing cooling towers, or providing liquids and other things to keep the residents at a safe body temperature, if you will. Emergency lighting obviously is important and must be maintained. Any fire detection, extinguishment, or alarm system. So anything related to fire protection has to be on the backup emergency power, and then anything, of course, related to sewage and waste disposal. Important to this list to add is also any medical device, life-saving medical devices. So if you have ventilators, as an example, in your facility, those have to be maintained, as well as oxygen generating devices. So not your portable tanks, but any oxygen actual generation devices have to be maintained to that. So really what to expect is what Brody mentioned is complete that assessment and get that submitted and get your approval or the denial with the plan of action then to accompany that. But things that you need to maintain are those plans, but also any changes in your risk. Because now that you'll have a generator on site, that may change some of your mitigation activities that you have around risk assessments. And so you'll need to make sure that we're up to date on that, updating any of the documents or checklists. And your overall emergency plan will now change because you now can sustain 96 hours, at least as it relates to power generation. You'll need to maintain those plans and procedures to that. So take a look at all of your plans, make sure that they reflect that, make sure that they reflect your kind of next best step that you'll do during an emergency. Before we move on, the last component to look at, as the regulation states, is lithium battery storage. It is the use of batteries or a combination of chained batteries together can happen. Of course, absolutely engage an electrical engineer on that. Important to note with lithium batteries, as well as normal fuel generation, is understanding the fire protection requirements associated with that. So many of you probably have seen the news. You can look up anything related to lithium batteries. The New York City fire related to e-bikes is a great example. Fire protection is key and paramount to the safety of your residents in your building. So make sure that you're taking that in consideration with your build out for those things. So now I'll hand it back to Chris.
Thank you both for your expertise on this topic. At this time, we're gonna do a QA portion of the webinar. So we're gonna answer some questions and direct them to our experts. I got a question for Matt. So what do I do if my SNF backup power assessment comes back compliant?
Congratulations, you're done. Check the box. Except for all the things, of course, I mentioned. Review any plans and procedures, because really that big change is that 96 hours. So we're going to make sure that your plans and procedures reflect the 96 hours of sustainability you have. But otherwise, you can check the box.
Excellent. Okay, the next question is for Brody. What do I do if my SNF backup power assessment comes back non-compliant?
If it comes back non-compliant, then obviously you can reach out to us and we can help determine what next steps are through that. If it's a fuel issue, then you could reach out to your local fuel provider and see if you can get that set up and get a plan in place. Otherwise, you can reach out to us if engineering is required. we can perform that engineering for you and create that design that'll make you compliant.
Thank you. Okay. Question for Matt. There is no way for us to complete construction in the timeframe provided. Any updates from HCI on extensions or changes to timelines if construction is required?
What we can say is keep communicating. Keep communicating with HCI, keep communicating with your local authorities around this and your plan to that. We recognize that supply chain is obviously continuing to be a challenge and hiring skilled labor to be able to come in and do these things, but keep communicating on those, and that project to continue to move forward is the best thing that you can do.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, we have another question for Brody. Am I required to use a licensed professional to complete my SNF Backup Power Assessment?
You are not required to do that. You could have a facilities personnel complete it. You can hire a professional, an engineer, architect, or local contractor to do it. You can also reach out to Direct Supply, and we can provide a quote for us to come out and perform the assessment as well.
Thank you, Brody. All right, another question for Matt. Is solar with batteries an option?
The lithium batteries, chained battery storage is an option. Be careful with solar because you have to maintain that 96 hours. So if you, depending on where you are, I know it's sunny California, but for whatever reason, if you run out of that 96-hour backup, you'll have to have another means to support that. But lithium battery is acceptable. But again, there's a lot of considerations to go on with that.
All right, for Brody, if deemed non-compliant, how do I budget or plan for construction?
You can reach out to us. We can provide you with a budget based on what you had and what site assessment is provided. If we can't get enough information based off what was provided, we can also perform a site visit to try to come up with a construction plan. Or otherwise engineering could be performed, and that'll come up with a approved design to determine what that budget will be.
Thank you. All right, another question for Matt. Once construction is complete, how do I ensure compliance is met?
So you'll get approval through those plans and construction to report back that construction is complete to that. And then it's to update your policies and procedures related to the emergency generator. And again, following NFPA 110. For inspection, testing, and maintenance on those things.
Brody, at the beginning, would it be best to bring a engineer in to perform the assessment?
It hasn't been stated directly from them or on the requirements, but from conversations that we have had from organizations in California, it will be definitely a benefit to have a PE perform those assessments so that they know that all that information is correct and is right.
Thank you. All right, another one for Matt. What can I expect if I haven't completed my assessment by January 1st, 2024? Will there be citations or fines associated with non-compliance?
What we know is that there is that deadline, January 1st of 2024. So get your assessments done and get them into that. It is up to the authority having jurisdiction on citations related to that, but we do recognize that a deadline has been placed. So it's in your best interest to get it completed by then.
Okay. Actually, this is for anybody here, I guess. Can a microgrid be part of the solution?
Yeah, so I can take a first stab at it, Brody. So microgrids, a part of the regulation, it falls under, I'm looking at it right now, a part of the regulation falls under Section E, which is the use of batteries or the combination of batteries in tandem in an electrical generation facility. So microgridding is a part of that, but again, it's the 96-hour assessment component to that. So it's often a challenge with the microgrids to support that level.
And that's obviously something that in the design phase, if that's the route to go and the real estate is available, a design could be created around that if that's the route somebody would like to go.
Right.
Okay. Brody, what is the cost to complete an assessment?
There's a couple different options that we can provide, really based on what you would like out of the assessment. Generally, the first level that we have is we can send a direct supply tells employee out. We can gather the information for you. On the second level is we would send a PE out. They would go on site, create the report, get everything information gathered necessary that you could then submit in the portal to figure out whether you're compliant or not. The third option is essentially what the second is we'd send a PE on site, but then we would also kind of give you an overall whether we think it is compliant, not compliant, and provide a budget for what we think the work would be required for them. As far as the cost of it, I would recommend you reach out to your TEL salesperson, and we can definitely provide you a proposal for that work.
Okay, thank you, Brody. I think this is the last question. Oh, we have one more question. How can we obtain a copy of this presentation? It's a great question. I guess I should answer it. I'm going to guess we're going to be able to get you copies of this presentation. They'll be emailed, is what my understanding is. So you will get a copy and they will be emailed. Great question. And I think that is
Chris,
it for questions right now.
And I can jump in. Back to the microgrid just shortly. I wanted to make sure I said the regulation correctly. So CMS put out a survey and certification memo. It's QSO 23-11-Life Safety Code, specifically around microgrids. So I would go and read that regulation. It specifically points to NFPA 99 as well as NFPA 70, which is the electrical safety code. So both of those additions are things to go and read about clean energy usage to that fuel cell, solar, wind, just general energy storage. So all of those things are acceptable, but absolutely go read that regulation, and it's on CMS's website.
Thank you for that clarification, Matt. Much appreciated.
So we wanted to just provide a little bit of information. Jensen Hughes, for those that don't know, is a fire protection engineering and risk consulting firm across the globe. We provide services across the continuum of critical infrastructure, but have a deep roots in healthcare. So specifically, we do a lot of work around life safety code, fire protection engineering, emergency management, safety and security, medical forensics, et cetera. So we are here as a partner to help you all as well if you need that assistance, and you can reach out to your direct supply representative or directly to Jensen Hughes if you have any questions on what we discussed today.
The other thing we can do is if you need anything from TELS, so if anything comes up, you have questions, concerns, or you need any help with the assessment, as we stated before, feel free to reach out to us. As we kind of went through in the presentation before, obviously coordinate your required documents, prepare the facility plan and propose remediation, and submit your backup. The first two we can help you out with, and as stated before, and then feel free to reach out. If you do submit your assessment, either through another organization or yourself, and engineering is required, reach out to us as well, and we can provide those services to you to make sure that you get that plan that's required. We can also then submit all that to the required AHJ, get those approvals, and get the project ready for permitting. And if you'd like, we can also then provide you a proposal to procure the equipment and perform the construction.